Hi, not board gamers, and welcome back to Not Board Gaming. I'm your host, I'm Mark. Now, I'm a couple of years late in reviewing this next game, which of course is Batman, the animated series, The Shadow of the Bat, as I backed it on Kickstarter back in the heady days of when I was backing Kickstarters at 2019, 2020-ish, something like that. And it was delivered in 2022, and I went for the all-in version. And let me tell you, I have so many boxes and figures, etc., of Batman, the animated series, the board game from IDW, that I don't think in my lifetime I will ever have time to play all of the content. So I played it quite a few times when I first got it, and then recently I got a bit of an itch to start playing it again. It's probably been 18 months since I last got it to the table. So the last day or so, I've played maybe, 4 games of Batman, the animated series. And I thought I'd kind of get into a quick review on what the game is, what it does, and how it fares for solo play as well. You see, it is a 1 to 4 player game that has both a competitive and a cooperative mode. It also has a pure solo mode as well called the Dark Knight mode. Now, I've not played with that because generally I like to play with multiple characters, but the Dark Knight mode allows you to play as just Batman, against all of the scenarios that come with it. So yeah, it's a 1 to 4 player game. Now in the competitive mode, it's a 1 versus all. Somebody would play as the villain, and then the other people would play as the heroes, or the superheroes if you like, the DC heroes from Batman. And there are always 4 heroes on the board plus the villain itself. So if you're playing with less than 5 people, 4 people, whatever it is, less than 5 people, then, so it's a 1 to 5 player game, not 1 to 4 player, sorry, everybody would come. If you're playing with less than 5 people, then somebody would control multiple heroes, and that's not the end of the world. As I say, solo, doing it in the cooperative way, I am controlling 4 heroes. And the multiplayer game, being 1 versus all, is very much a skirmish game. The main characters, or the main villains, are going to be controlled by a deck of cards, and you get to use their various abilities in that. In the cooperative game, it's a little bit different. You have these kind of predefined cards which control the AI. So here we have, on this particular scenario, there's Mr. Freeze. There's 2 sides to these cards if you're controlling it as a villain for the 1 versus all, and then the other side is for the cooperative game. And of course, they have limited movements. They don't use the card deck, which allows them to do multiple things. So their moves are relatively structured in terms of the cooperative game. So I've only ever played it cooperatively. I would like to play it multiplayer and just see how it feels as a kind of 1 versus all game. So competitive is very much a skirmish game. Cooperative is more of an optimization puzzle, if you like. Yes, there's some combat in there, and it's driven by dice, and I'll come on to that in a second. There's some combat in there, but because you're working from these predefined AI sheets, obviously it's a bit like playing a video game. You get to get to learn the patterns of how they attack, and that's exactly what happens in the cooperative game. So it does miss out on some of that kind of interplay from the set of cards that you got in the multiplayer game or the 1 versus all game. So yeah, so this is about the cooperative mode. I say there is a single player mode called the Dark Knight mode, and I've not played that just yet, but we'll talk about the cooperative game as I've played it. Now, when I say there's a lot of content for this, I mean there is a F-ton of content for this game. I've got boxes and boxes, all of which will add new minions in there, will add new bad guys in there, add new heroes in there, new levels to play, new episodes to play. There is just a lot, but I'm just going to talk about the base game here. You see, the base game comes with a number of scenarios. I've got one of the scenario books here. And there are, I think, 12. So this is the scenario book for episodes 1 to 5, and then there's another scenario book for episodes 6 to 12. Eminently replayable. You don't have to play them in order at all, in any way you want. So you can play them in any way that you want. And then each box that you get, in terms of the all-in expansion, adds even more episode guides and more scenarios to play. So as I say, there's no way on God's green earth that if I played this every day, I would get through all of those scenarios. Well, there would be, obviously, if I played it every day, but it would take me quite a long time to do that. So you've got to kind of understand whether you like the core game itself. In terms of the IP, as we know, Batman the Animated Series was a very, very highly regarded animated series, I think from the mid-90s, early 2000s, something like that. And it does capture all of the essence in terms of the characters themselves. So if you look at the miniatures here we've got the Batman. Sorry, I mean, so many miniatures here, I wouldn't have time to paint them. You can see the Batman miniature just there. And for example, on my characters I've been playing, I've got Batgirl, Batman, Catwoman, and Robin. And you also get in the you also get in the base box, I think you get Commissioner Gordon as well that you can play with, but you always choose 4 characters to play with. And each of them has their own kind of abilities on there. They've got their own special actions on there. And if they've got a utility belt, they can use gadgets as well. If they don't have a utility belt, then they can't use gadgets. All of these 4 characters, I believe, have a utility belt, I think. Oh no, Catwoman doesn't have a utility belt. But all of the 4 characters have a utility belt. So, sorry, 3 of the 4 characters have a utility belt. So they get to use these gadgets, basically, that help them to help them as they're going along. Now, the game is, as I mentioned, kind of 1 to 4 player multiplayer and cooperative. Oh, sorry, 1 to 5 player multiplayer and cooperative. And it is, although it has a lot of board game mechanics, it is classed as a board game. Also a lot of miniatures in there, and it probably straddles a foot more into the miniatures camp than it does into the board game camp. And the reason being is that there are just a lot of rules. As you can imagine, with miniatures games and with games like this, there's kind of loads and loads of moving parts, and what you get is kind of different rules for how each miniature acts, what they do, what they can do, what the terrain does to them, how the different status tokens work, how the terrain works, whether it's up or down, whether they're leaping, etc. There's lots and lots of rules to go through in the rulebook, and I'll talk about the rulebook in a wee while. But in terms of the IP itself, it kind of captures and covers everything that it needs to do in terms of the IP. In the base game, as I mentioned, you get the kind of core heroes plus Jim Gordon and 12 scenarios that you can play with, and you can repeat those scenarios, try different configurations on there, etc. And in all of the expansions, you get more heroes, more bad guys, more minions, more villains. There's even one of the expansions that allows you to play as the villains against a singular bad guy, a singular hero. So it's 1 versus all the other ways. So there's lots of different ways to do this. Now, I think this was IDW's last game before they got out of the board gaming business. I say I backed it, I think it was 2019, 2020, something like that. Probably 2020 when I backed it. When I was just backing everything at that point. My Kickstarter and GameFound backing has gone severely down in the past kind of year or so. So I was kind of happy to receive it, and I was very overwhelmed by all of the stuff that you could get in the boxes. And I think that actually put me off kind of playing the game a little bit, because there was just so much bloody stuff that you can get. But it does use their orgs system, the IDW org system. So they also did other games that use that, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I think they did Ghostbusters as well. And you can integrate them into this, so you can have the DC heroes fighting against the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles if you want, or the DC bad guys doing that, etc. So there are instructions and ways to actually combine the various IDW org systems games together. So that's kind of an overview on it. What we'll do is I'll just drop you down to the table. I'll explain some things. There's no way on God's green earth that I'm going to explain the entire rulebook to you, because we would be here all day and you would still have loads of questions at the back end of it. So I'll explain what things are on the board, and then we'll come back up and give you my final thoughts on Batman the Animated Series Shadow of the Bat from IDW Games. It's out of print now, so if it does look of interest to you, you're going to have to shop around on eBay, etc. to try and find it. But yeah, let's head down to the table. Okay, so here you can see everything kind of set out. Just finished this scenario and actually lost the scenario. And I think this is scenario 3 in the book, which I believe is correct. Yes, if we go to the scenario book, and when you go in the scenario books, you can see that it's got how to set it up and what the various backstory is, where everything goes, and what the win conditions are as well. So this is scenario 3, which is Heart of Ice Act 1, and where we're playing against Mr. Freeze. And it tells you how everything's set up, and as you can see, I've got everything set up on the board game, on the board state accordingly. Obviously, all of the figures are moved because it's towards the back end of it. So, down here we have our heroes, and I've pushed all these together. In reality, I'll have these a little bit more spread out. So we have Batgirl, we have Batman, we have Catwoman, we have Robin down here. And here are the bad guys that are on the map. We have Mr. Freeze himself, we have Crusher, which is this one, we have a hired gun, which is there. I think there were 4 on the board to start with. We have the Enforcer, which is these 2 guys here. And you can see there's various things on the map. We've got a police car, we've got a Batmobile, we have some high terrain, that's the ones in blue, kind of areas you can climb up to, and we have icy terrain here, which is hazardous terrain, or what is it called? It's called slow terrain. That's icy terrain because it's Mr. Freeze in there. And it's all modular, so you kind of move it together. Here we have some of the tokens. I say some because I've got a load in the box that I haven't pulled out basically, and I just reach into the box and get them because I'd be here all day lining tokens up. These are battle dice which you use, and you'll see some other dice. Each character has their own bespoke dice on top of their sheet, and I'll explain how that works in a second. I'll just move that token off there. I'd lost it anyway. So yeah, and over here we have the cooperative mode, the flow of the board, the flow of the round, what happens, and the initiative deck. You see, in the cooperative game, because nobody's playing the villain, we're going to work from an initiative deck, and this kind of tells you who's going to go and where. So you mix all the cards together there, shuffle them, pull them down, and that dictates who goes for the next round. So the first thing you do on the round, you can see these 3 dice at the top of all of these. We're going to roll these dice and we're going to put them back here. So we'll roll Batgirl's first. There we go, and she's got a movement, a shield, and a bat signal. We roll Batman's. We got 2 shields and a double punch. We will roll Catwoman's, and she's got a shield, a punch, and a movement. And then we'll roll Robin's, and Robin has got 2 punches and a move. And then what you're going to do is you're going to place these dice in the middle 3 on these boards, the middle 3 areas. Let me just move those figures out of the way. The middle 3 areas here. Then the outer dice. The right outer dice is going to be shared with the board on the right. The left outer dice is going to be shared with the board on the left. So everybody gets effectively 5 dice, which means you can get up to 5 actions you can do. You're not going to be able to use them all the time. So we also noticed here that we've got this bat signal here. So when you get a bat signal, you get to get a focus token back up to your focus limit, which is here, and you get to heal a health as well. So we do that, and then you get to put it to anything that you want. So say we put her on a... we'll put that one on that. Okay, so we then put these 3 dice here, bearing in mind you're trying to link up with what you want to share. Batman's got 2 shields, so that shield can probably go in the middle. Robin's got a shield as well. We're going to put the ranged attack there and a movement there. So we're going to put that double fist there and then 2 shields there. Okay. Here on this, we're going to put a movement there and then shield and the fist there. And then here, we'll put the shield in the middle. We'll give them both a fight action. So they're all set up now. And then what you do is you have a look here. So we know that's a double strike. And we're going to get one of these tokens and put that there. Okay. And we know that's a shield. So we'll get a shield token and put that just... There's a shield, there it is, there. That's a movement, so we'll put that movement there. Okay, and that's a ranged attack, so we'll put that ranged attack token there. That's a shield and a bash there, so we'll put one of those tokens there. That is just a straightforward bash, so the melee attack, that's there. And then we go to this side of the board because it's looping around to Robin. That's a movement, so we'll put a movement on Robin's side there. And that's a strike, so we'll put a strike on Batgirl's side there. And that's kind of how you set up the game. Now, there are different things you can do with some characters. For example, before rolling your action die, Batman may set 1 die to any of the bat sides of his choice, non-bat side of his choice, and then put the remaining die as usual. So Batman has the way to kind of seed the board. I didn't do it just for that. Others have various things as well. For example, Robin can add a separate token on top of one of these. So if I wanted Robin to have an additional shield, I'd do that. But maybe I want Robin to have an additional bash, and I'd do that. If I used any of the outer 2, which are shared with others, then they also get the token as well. So what we'll do is we will... Let's see... what can we do? Shield's quite good. Movement's good. So let's get a double move. Let's get a movement on there. There we go. So they've got double movement, so I can flip that over there. And we know that they've got a movement and a bash on that. So there we go. They've got that all set up now. So everything is there. So we've rolled that. We've rolled the action dice, we've arranged the action dice, we've shuffled the initiative deck, and now we're going to proceed to the battle phase, and this is where things happen. So we'll take the first card, and it's Robin to go first, okay? So Robin's going to go first. Now, when we look at Robin's hand down here, we have a number of things. We've got some skill cards, which is already got in play here, okay? And these skill cards, if they are in play, if they have this symbol on them, I think you can play one per turn, that they stay in play permanently. Otherwise, they go back into your hand, but you have to spend the resources. So, for example, on Batman, you would have to spend 2 melee tokens plus a move to get this, which allows him to leap up 3 paces in a straight line, then make an attack plus 2 melee strike, and any dice of wounds that he would suffer from falling during this move are added to the attack instead. But Robin hasn't got those. He's got those out permanently there. And he also has some gadgets which he can play as well. So he can play any of these gadgets if he hasn't used them already on his turn. We've got the knockout gas, which will stun. We've got the batarang, which is about doing some range damage. We have the grappling gun, which allows him to move and ignore terrain effects and ignore people on the map because you can't move through people. And then we have the throwing blade because that will improve his ranged attacks. He's got no ranged attacks. We're not going to use any of them just now. So we look down at Robin's dice just here. Let me ring Robin's board on. There we go. So we ring Robin's board just here, and he's got potential to 2 move, 3 punch and 2 shields. The shields are always active when they're on the board. You don't actually spend the shields. So where is Robin? Robin is just here. So say he wants to move towards this enforcer up there, okay? We know Robin's got a double move. Now, double move, that's his move there, and he's got 4 move. However, he's on slow terrain. It's going to cost him 2 to move on that, on any square. But he's going to try and take out this, this Crusher, who's currently at a health of 6 against a maximum health of 8. So we'll do that, and that's his move done. You don't get to keep it. So any that you don't use, any that you don't use, you lose. He could spend the 2 move tokens to actually leap instead, but he's okay where he is. Then he's going to attack. So we're going to slide these dice up just here, okay? And he's going to attack. And how does he attack? Well, I don't know if you can see on his board here because of the light that's reflecting. Here we go. So he's got 2 punch tokens, sorry, 3 punch tokens, which is 1, 2, 3, and he's got a set punch of 1 just there. So that means he's got 4 punch dice he's going to roll against the Crusher. So we take now the battle dice, okay? Let's just chuck him that on there. So he's got 1, 2, 3, 4 he's going to roll, and we roll these battle dice. And these battle dice have got either a hit, a double hit, or a block. So we're looking for hits on this, okay? And we roll those dice. There we go. Great. So we look there, and he's only done 1 hit, which is no good because the Crusher has a block of 3. So that's absolutely no good. That did me no favours whatsoever. However, if you've got a focus token, which we just magically put on there, we can spend that and re-roll these dice. Okay? You can re-roll 1 or any of them. So let's have a look what we roll now. This is a lot better. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So he's rolled 5 there. The Crusher is going to block 3. That means he's going to get through with 2. Robin's going to get through with 2. That does the final damage to the Crusher. There we go. And that is the Crusher off the map. Okay, so that's what would happen there. But what would happen if the bad guys were to attack? Then that's Robin's go effectively done. We know Robin has got 2 defense plus 3 there, so he's got 5 defense. So let's find the Crusher card and let's see what would happen there. Here we go. So the Crusher. So now we've got the Crusher taking their turn. They're probably going to attack Robin. Let's just have a look at their sheet. Okay, so let's presume they're still alive here. Let's look at the Crusher sheet, okay? So minions, which are anything except the villains, get 2 activations on their turn, and a villain will get 3 activations. And this is a huge henchman, okay? Enemy figures to each Crusher has 2 figures when breaking away or rolling for awakening. Don't worry about that. Breaking away is if you move adjacent, when you're adjacent to them, and rolling for awakening is if your hero has been knocked down. If the Crusher melee strike deals at least 2 wounds, the defending figure receives 1 stun token also. So we know the Crusher will move 3. We know their hit is 4. Block we don't have to worry about because he's attacking now and their health is 8. And down here is their priority. They're a melee fighter, so they're only going to attack figures adjacent to them. And they're going to attack the figure that's got the highest health. Now what they try to do is move to an optimal position. That's more so for range than here. But in reality, Catwoman has probably got higher health. Yes, she has. But we're going to do it towards Robin because we've got Robin set up here. Okay? So they don't roll dice for their attack. They're instantly going to do 4 damage against Robin. But Robin has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 defense symbols on there. So he's going to roll those 5 dice and see what happens in terms of defense. And we're looking for these blocks here. Look at that. Okay. So he's going to block 3 of the 4 going through. That means that Robin is only going to take 1 damage. However, let's say if there's only 1 block that went through. Okay. So there we go. Only 2 blocks that went through, and therefore he took 2 damage. He would take 2 of these. So they're 1 and 3 sided. 2 of those, and according to the Crusher's sheet, he would also receive a stun token, and there we go, that's the stun token. And stun effects, and there's various effects in there which will affect, the fact he can't do anything the next turn. He has to kind of spend that stun token. So that's how a bad guy would move. However, some of them interlink. So for example, here we have the Enforcer, okay? And he says Enforcers receive 1 action and activate when after any other henchman initiative card is drawn. They've all got traits on the top here, okay? And one of the Crusher's traits is that he is in fact a henchman. So therefore we know that this Enforcer is going to move. Only 1 action he's going to get, so he's going to get 1 action. If he was next to anybody, that would be an attack action. It's not going to, so he's just going to move 1 up to there. Okay, so he's moved towards Catwoman. So when the Enforcer comes out, or when the when any other henchman comes out, we know they're going to activate. So that's those 2 turns done there. So let's have a look at the next one then. Okay. There we go. We've got the Enforcer. So there are multiple Enforcers on the board. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we'll activate them in whichever order you want. They're always going to go towards whoever's got the lowest health, and it's obviously Robin that's got the lowest health here. So that one is going to move there, and they're going to attack Robin. So they're going to come at Robin with 2 attack. We know Robin has got 5 defense, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're going to roll those dice, okay? And he doesn't block anything there. Oh dear. So in reality, Robin would be out of the game. He would be knocked down then, basically. So Robin would go there because he's taken way too many hits. If I had a focus token, of course, I would be able to re-roll 1 or any of those dice, but we've still got another henchman on there. Now, he can't get to Robin, okay? So he's going to take his move. They can move diagonally. He's going to take his move towards Catwoman. Catwoman has got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, basically. So there we go, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Got 6 dice there for Catwoman. And we're looking to block the Enforcer's 2 moves. 1, no. So Catwoman is actually going to take a... There we go. Going to take a hit. So that's the Enforcer done, activated with their 2 actions there. Both of them activated. We'll take the next one over, and that would be Mr. Freeze. That is a villain. Now, on Batman's card, one of the things that you can't see on Batman's card just here, when you play with Batman, is it's got this escalation down here. For cooperative, the first Arkham villain initiative card for the round receives a 2nd turn at the end of the round. So with this, Mr. Freeze is going to take a turn now. I'm going to take a turn later. Okay, Mr. Freeze is back here, and he's going to take 3 activations. And we'll look at what he can do. I'm not go through it. So he can move 2. He can attack 3, which is a ranged attack. He's got 3 block and a health of 18. I think he's on 15 at the moment. And then Heart of Ice. It says, at the end of his turn, place the Icy Terrain token under each enemy figure that Mr. Freeze attacked. If the defending figure is already on Icy Terrain, they receive a Cold token instead. So you need to know what the Cold tokens do and what the Icy Terrain tokens do. If Mr. Freeze deals at least 2 wounds to an enemy figure during his turn, that figure receives 1 stun token. If the figure already has a Cold token, then they are entangled instead, entangled for 4 instead. And he ignores the effects of slow terrain. So Mr. Freeze would take 3 actions, and he would go to whoever's got the least amount of focus tokens. And if we look in here, it's in line of sight. This one here has got the least amount of focus tokens. Their range is 3, so 1, 2, 3. So Mr. Freeze is going to attack Catwoman, and they don't need to move because they're fine there. They've got a range of 3, so they don't need to move. They're going to stay where they are, and they're going to do 3 attacks against Catwoman. At the end of the round, depending on the board state, they're going to come back and attack Catwoman again. But after each and every attack, what you've got to do is reevaluate this target down here, because of course it may well change. It may well be that mainly on health ones, but it may well be that the health change and therefore their focus shifts to somebody else because they're going to the highest or the lowest health. That is kind of a brief, really brief rundown on how the game works. I've not talked about all the minutiae of rules, but you can see it's this kind of optimization puzzle where you're using the cards to add benefits and assists to your characters, and you're looking at the various terrain and how you can use that to your advantage. And there's lots of miniatures, lots of tokens, lots of rules minutiae in this. But that is a pretty brief overrun on how Batman, the animated series Shadow of the Bat, works. And there we go. That's a really brief, very, very brief rundown of roughly how Batman, the animated series Shadow of the Bat works. So let's talk about kind of my thoughts on the game and whether I think it's worth it from a solo perspective. Component-wise, everything is really, really good. I mean, you get loads of stuff, potentially too much stuff, but you get loads of stuff if you've got it all in. The quality of miniatures, if you're a painter, you will have so much fun painting these miniatures, because there is, just as you get kind of up and through the various boxes, there are just a slew of them. Here we go. These are all the ones that come with the base game, the Shadow of the Bat, and you can see there's a giant man bat there as well. But each expansion box brings its own miniatures, and therefore there are, literally, I don't know, probably 100 or so miniatures that you can get to choose from if you've got everything. But the quality is really good, really evokes the feeling of Batman and the animated series, and as everything you're looking from Catwoman to Batman to Batgirl to Robin to Commissioner Gordon to all the villains that you know and love from Batman the animated series. It's great. All of the various tiles and tokens, etc., all have, in terms of the tokens, some great artwork on there, and in terms of the tiles, can be a little bit bland, admittedly, but you do get this kind of dark feeling as you're playing the game. Do like these player boards, these kind of dual-layered player boards where you put the heroes card in there, and you've got this slidey action on the dice as you use the abilities on the dice, and then adding tokens, as you saw from sharing dice with your other players, is a nice little mechanic there. So production-wise, I really like it. I think storage-wise, it's a proper pain in the backside, to tell you the truth, because all of the tokens you're going to need to put in separate bags, and you need to mark them up to what there are, because there are so many tokens. And because there are so many tokens, you not always remember what each token does, and if you've not played the game in a while, like I hadn't before a couple of days ago, then chances are it's just going to be like, oh my god, what does this do, what does that do? So yeah, production-wise, really like it. Let's talk about the rules now then. So the rule book is kind of some 47 pages long. There is a bit of a glossary and index in there, but it is 47 pages long. Covers both the competitive, the cooperative, and the Dark Knight solo mode rules. Now, the pure solo mode rules, they look like a breeze. If you know how to play the game, then they look like an absolute breeze to learn. They're just a minor addition, and you're playing Batman on his other side of the card, which is the Dark Knight mode just there, the other side of his card, and you're playing as a singular fighter. But the rules are written like a war game or a miniatures game, because of the sheer amount of interconnecting things that happen. There's almost thrown absolutely everything you can think of at this game. And when you do that in a game like this, and what you have is the propensity to have quite a few edge cases, and that's what you will get from this, is some edge cases where you're going to have to work it out or go to the forums and just work it through. The rules are actually not too bad. There is an errata, it's not massive, for some minor rules corrections, so you want to go online and have a look at that, but the rules aren't too bad. But in terms of, they are generally a wall of text with very few pictorial examples. Would have been great to actually walk you through half a scenario in this, just to get you used to the flow of the game. I have heard people say that it's best to start learning the game using the Dark Knight mode to get used to the mechanisms before you throw kind of the competitive or the cooperative mode in there. So yeah, rules, they're okay. They're not too bad. You will get through it, but I will absolutely guarantee on your first game, maybe second game as well, sometimes into the third game, you will make mistakes. So don't worry if you're playing through your first game, you're halfway through, you've realised that you've played a few rules incorrect, reset it, start again. Because once it's out, it doesn't take any time to reset. But that brings me on to the next thing. With a game that's big and sprawling like this, with a game that has so many, if you got the all-in, so many variant things that you can put in there, so many different ways that you can play, so many tokens, so many different tiles for the board, so many bad guys, etc. Setup is a beast on this game, as is Teardown, as you try to get everything back into the box. It's not a quick game to set up. I think the other night when I set it up for the first time in kind of 18 months or so, it might have taken me the best part of 45 minutes as I tried to remember what was what and where it went. Obviously, if I was to take it down now and set it back up again, it'd take me a lot less than that, but it's still not a quick game to set up because each scenario has its own kind of its own ways that it needs to be set up, and because of how you have to store the tokens in bags and all the tiles in bags, etc., it can just be a bit of a bear. Same with takedown, you want to make sure it's nice and organized when you get it down. Takedown will be quicker, but setup is a bit of a bear, so do bear that in mind. Game length, you're probably talking, depending on the scenario, around about an hour for a scenario, but you're going to have to add that time on at the beginning and the time on at the end to play the game. There are lots of player aids that cover lots of things, but not everything. So we have a game reference sheet. We have the cooperative mode, which tells you how it works. We have the terrain guide, which tells you how that works. We have on the back of the game reference sheet the competitive mode reference, which tells you how that works. On this game reference sheet, excuse me, gives you all of the various tokens that you can put, the effect tokens, status tokens, Smile X, Fear Toxin, Entangle, Stun, Cold, Under Fire, yada, yada, yada. Tells you what they look like, doesn't tell you what they do. You have to go back to the rule book to understand what they do. Now, you know, not every token is used on every game. So when you're on every scenario, should I say, so when you go into a particular scenario, you can read upon the tokens that are going to be used, but some of them may well be used in multiple scenarios, and you're just going to have to refer back to this. So it's great telling me what these are, but tell me, you know, you should have told me what they do. That would have been a far more use for me than actually doing that. Getting used to what the tokens do, how the terrain works, you know, what slow terrain does, what rough terrain does, bottomless terrain, unstable terrain, harmful lines, blocking lines, climbable lines, obscuring lines, slow lines, covered terrain, and elevated terrain. They're all the different permutations of what can go on there, and then you throw in line of sight as well. This game can be frustrating if you're not going to dedicate the time towards learning those rules. In lieu of watching a good kind of a proper how to play on this video, and I don't think there are, on this game, and I don't think there are that many videos out there which are kind of thorough how to plays for this game. You are, when you first start to play the game, going to spend a lot of time going back to the rules, playing the game wrong, resetting it, starting again, and getting to a space where you're comfortable with it. Core mechanisms, once you get used to it, how the bad guys work, as long as you remember kind of how all the cards are interlinked. For example, let's say the Enforcer, when they act when the card is drawn, but they also get one activation when another henchman is drawn as well. As long as you remember those things, it's not too bad, and you will start darting along the cards. Controlling 4 characters, as you have to do for a cooperative mode. Again, initially, you're probably going to forget some of the special actions they have on their cards. Don't worry too much about it. None of them are game breaking, but it can be a bit galling when you go, oh my God, I forgot that Robin at the start of his round can add an additional token on there, etc., which is shared with other ones, or I forgot to prepare Batman's dice. So it can be a little bit galling, not game breaking, but you're probably just making the game harder for yourself. So you need to develop a flow of absolutely checking everything at every part of the game. So, you know, beginning of the round, any of the effects, any of the special actions affect my characters, any of the bad guy special effects affect my characters, any of the tokens affect what's happening. Fine, great, let's get on with the setup phase. Then we move into the battle phase. Right, what can each one do at the beginning of their turn? What can each one do at the end of their turn? How do I best use them to do that? You know, in what order can they come out in? Again, check that. Check when the bad guys are activated, what happens at the beginning, what happens at the end. So there's lots, you're going to have to develop a way of being pretty thorough to get the most out of the game and understand how the game works. So, yeah, and then it comes to the difference between the competitive and the cooperative game. So as I say, the competitive game, and it's how the game was designed, is a one versus all. One person will play the villain, the other people will play the heroes, or if you got the expansion, one people will play the hero and the others will play the villains. So, yeah, it was designed as a competitive game. I've not played it competitive, and I really want to try it competitive because I think that is where it will shine. It's a skirmish game as a competitive game, and as a cooperative game, it's more of a puzzle optimization type game with some combat in there. In the competitive game, as I mentioned, rather than using the actions on these cards, they have their own set of cards which they use. So we can pull those out. They have their own sets of cards which they use. Here we go. I'll just show you some of these, which I've never used, obviously, because I've not played it competitively. And these, there's loads of them, basically. So, for example, I've got Regroup here. No, let's look at that. Take 5. When played, choose a villain figure. That figure regains life equal to the hits rolled on 3 battle dice and regain 1 focus. You're fired. You may select up to 3 cards from either your hand or discard pile in any combination and remove them from the game. Cat's Claws. When active, making a melee strike against adjacent figures, Catwoman treats double hits as triple hits. So they have far more agency in the multiplayer game than they do in the competitive game. And that's understandable. It was initially designed as a 1 versus many game. All of that is stripped out, of course, for the cooperative and the solo game, where everything is going to be dictated by what's on these cards and what initiatives they come out in. So what it does is it takes kind of 50% of 50% of the game, if you like. So if you're playing the villain, you're 50% of the game, and then 50% of what you do is going to be driven by those card actions. They take that away and they replace it with these kind of prescribed way of the game working from what's on these cards. Don't get me wrong, it makes it a very, very playable game, but you're not getting the Batman the Animated Series experience that you're getting from the 1 versus all, and it's going to be very difficult. If ever a game screamed out for an app, it would have been this game. Had IDW not pulled out of the board gaming business, having a game like this which controlled the 1 and you could play the many, or control the many and you played the 1, would have been absolutely fantastic. Even having an app for controlling each hero and what statuses they got on there, or each villain and minion and what their damage is and what statuses they've got on, would have been a tremendous help, because what you've got is a game that has a lot of overheads, and that overheads is going to mean that you've got lots of rules to take into consideration, lots of terrain, lots of status tokens, lots of who's got what health they're at, who's shared what with what. So it is a game of checking, and at the back end of it, you're going to roll your battle dice, mitigate them by whatever you got on here, and maybe re-roll them using your focus tokens to see who wins that particular battle. So, you've got a big sprawling game, and probably to get the most out of it you need a lot of the various expansions on it. You've got a game that was obviously ostensibly designed for multiplayer and cooperative and solo, whilst not being tacked on, there's a lot of thought going into it, is not the 100% experience. You've got a game that straddles very heavily into the miniatures world rather than the board gaming world, and therefore comes with a slew of rules. You've got a game where the setup is a beast, and keeping on top of everything and understanding you're going to play things wrong is also a bit of a bugbear for you. So you've got all these things going against this game, where the ultimately is a cooperative game from a solo perspective. You're not playing a game as it was intended. So do I enjoy it? And despite all of that, I do actually. But I do. I think the reason I didn't play it so long is I was intimidated. I remember it's fairly early in my board gaming career, or journey, should I say, career. When I initially got this, I only started playing board games in 2019, I think it was, or modern board games. And therefore, when this arrived, I was probably in the midst of kind of building up the channel and didn't have loads of time to devote to it. So it did intimidate me for a while. I kept looking at it on my shelf thinking, do I want to keep this? And I've got, however much it's worth on eBay, and I kind of wrapped up in a game I've not touched in 18 months. Do I really want to keep it? So that's one of the reasons that drove me to get it from the shelf. I am going to be keeping it, and mainly because the way I play games has changed fairly recently. I now have a fairly, have access to playing with other people more often than I ever did. I still will play it solo. These scenarios, they're all puzzles, and they all set up differently. They all play very, very differently, and I do enjoy this core mechanism of kind of getting these dice and rolling them and then sharing the moves, etc., learning the patterns of the attacking and working out that puzzle. But you've got to go into the cooperative and solo version knowing that it's not a skirmish game like the 1 versus all is, okay? It is an optimization puzzle. It's a dynamic, very dynamic optimization puzzle with lots of moving parts, but you've got to go in that you're going to have to go a lot of rules overhead and a lot of setup and a lot of time invested to play it right. But when you do, you've got a really smart and nice optimization puzzle that feels semi-thematic. The theme does kind of come through when you're using the grappling hook as Batman. You can envision yourself kind of moving from one area to the other, or leaping across buildings, etc., or throwing the batarangs. It does feel fairly thematic, but it is a lot of overhead to get into. So it's a hard one to recommend. It's a game that I think, I know it's going to stay in my collection. This was kind of make or break time for it over the last few days. It is going to stay in my collection because when I've got a few hours, and it's going to take a few hours, I'm quite happy to set it up. Now I understand the rules again a little bit more, and now I know how things work. Don't get me wrong, I still made mistakes. I still forgot to check on things, but overall I probably played it about 95% correctly on my last game and lost right on the last round. I was so close. As it got to I had 4 rounds to kind of defeat Mr. Freeze, and I'd get through the first kind of 2.5 into the third round thinking this is going to be a breeze, and then all of a sudden things went wrong really, really fast for me, and it escalated really, really, really quickly, and it became exciting, and I enjoyed that about it. So yeah, it's a game recommended with caveats. First of all, it's probably going to cost you a pretty penny to get it now. It's out of print, so you're going to have to find it on eBay, etc. I know it's out there for sale by people. Secondly, I would start off with only the base game just to see if the core mechanics are for you. If they are, then you need to go out and find all of the other expansions if you really enjoy this. Thirdly, if you have access to play it solo and you have a group of friends that you think would enjoy this game from a competitive scenario as well, then it becomes a bit of a no-brainer, because I can see that the skirmish is going to be a hell of a lot of fun. I'm hoping to play it skirmish in the next few weeks. So then I would recommend it if you know you're going to get to play it with other people. But if it's just you and just on your own, and you're going to play either the Dark Knight mode or the cooperative mode, really just kind of tap those brakes a little bit. There's a lot going on in this game. Obviously, it's not supported anymore from IDW, so there's no future expansions, etc. from it. So you're going into that with an element of risk. It does have its community out there, but its community is largely skewed towards a one versus many game. And from a solo or cooperative perspective, you're getting about 75% of the game that they are getting, maybe a little bit less. And therefore, your propensity to continue to want to play it could affect you on there. So recommended with loads of caveats. I enjoy it. I'm having a lot of fun with it. It's staying in my collection, but it's not a game for a casual solo gamer. And unless you've got the ability to then play it with other people, the chances are you're not going to want to spend however much it's going for these days on getting this, no matter how good it looks, no matter how thematic it feels, no matter how great the artwork is in there. From a solo perspective, it's hard to kind of wholeheartedly recommend it. So, thank you very much for joining me on this journey of Batman, the animated series, Shadow of the Bat, from IDW Studios. Yeah, it's a good game. Obviously, it's going to shine in one versus all. It's going to be expensive, loads of overhead, loads of rules. Recommended, but with loads of caveats. Just don't rush out, even if you're a huge Batman fan as a solo gamer. Don't rush out to get this, because it could be too much for a lot of people. Yeah, thank you very much. My name's Mark. This is Not Board Gaming. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Check out our other videos. And one final thought: if you can't find anyone else to play with, then there's nothing wrong with playing with yourselves. Until next time, bye-bye.